Well, I'm trying to record this in my garden. I've nearly forgotten how to do it. But today I wanted to talk about how God talks to us. Because for myself, I want to be proactive with God and I want to know what He's saying to me. Recently, I had a sort of, what would you call it, a retreat at home. And with it, you get someone who gives you a passage of scripture to study during the day. And then you ring up in the evening and you go through the things you've discovered through this scripture. Anyway, I'd already come across John's Gospel because I was decided that during this lockdown period, I was going to read through it. And to me, that's the easiest book in the Bible to read. And it makes the most sense to me. Not that the Bible doesn't make sense in general, but John's Gospel particularly is a favourite of mine. And I'd come across John chapter 15, which was the vine and the branches, where Jesus is the vine and the Father is the gardener. And you know, on this virtual reality retreat, that was the first verse that came up. And not only that, but about 4 or 5 times during that week, not through the retreat, but through other things, that verse and that passage of scripture kept coming up again and again. It's in those circumstances where I really feel God speaking to me. So this week, when I had my daily drive, well, not a daily drive out, a weekly drive out, and I went to Ashdown Forest, and on the way back I was passing by Burswood, where I used to work. And that's what we used to call a thin place. It's a place where we think that heaven's quite close to earth, and Burswood was a place of healing. So I parked up there. There was no one else around, probably a few cars from dog walkers, but I didn't see anybody. And I walked round the front of the house, round the back, past the terrace and down onto the lawn at the back, where there's a lovely cross made out of paving slabs. It's massive. You can see it from the air. Anyway, I stood there for a few moments, just thinking. And it was one of those moments where I really felt God's presence. Now, you could say it was my imagination, but I'd already had this recurring coming up of scripture, like I say, five times in a week. So it was a special moment, but I just wanted to say that's just one of the ways God speaks to us. But prior to that, well, a few years, about 3 or 4 years ago now, my wife and I went up to Walsingham. Well, it was me that wanted to go, so I dragged her with me. And it was one of those places, again, a thin place where heaven's very close to earth. And we went into this little chapel, and Eve said to me, well, what are we going to do now? Because she's very practical, you see. And I said, well, we'll just sit here for a moment and see what happens. Well, what actually happened was these ladies who were standing outside the door spontaneously burst out in song. And it was one of those moments where all the hairs stand up on the back of your neck. Anyway, it wasn't until we were driving home 2 or 3 days later that Eve said to me in the car, you're going to think I'm really stupid, but do you know when we were in that funny little chapel place? And I said, yes. She said, well, I felt my mum speaking to me and saying, I'm all right. And her mum had died about 3 years previous to that. Now, that proves to me that God speaks to us, not only by Eve's experience, but mine also, that God's speaking to us is a comfort and a reassurance. So I just want to leave those thoughts with you, and I'll be very interested if anybody else has similar experiences, if you could tell me, because that would encourage me too. So have a good week, and God bless you. Bye-bye.